Pursuant to House Resolution 667, the previous question is ordered on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Colorado. The question is on the amendment. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it and the amendment is agreed to.
Hey everybody, Mo here. Today we're talking about some macro news, sales figures coming out of Canada, of course a follow-up on our safe banking discussion from the other day, some news out of New York and Florida, another acquisition from Cresco Labs, and more. Welcome to the Friday, September 24th edition of Mary Jane Markets, a show covering the developing news of the North American cannabis sector every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, or thereabouts. The show is still very new and I'm still figuring that kind of stuff out. I also analyze a few of the operators, Cresco Labs, Curaleaf, Green Thumb Industries, and TrueLeaf. I want to start with the broader market news and work our way down to the updates on specific companies. And today we're starting even broader than usual with what's above our sector.
You're only seeing what's in front of you. You're not seeing what's above you.
The Federal Reserve's FOMC met this week. That's the Federal Open Market Committee. And per usual, Chairman Jerome Powell held a press conference. They meet about 8 times a year, and I always pay attention to these. And there was a significant change in, I'll say, outlook by the participants, but there has not yet been any policy changes. As you may know, the pandemic hobbled the global economy, and in my opinion, accommodative fiscal and monetary policy have been the crutches that have gotten it this far. Fiscal being the stimulus packages coming out of Congress, and just as importantly, monetary being the short-term interest rates being kept near zero and the continued asset purchases by the Fed. Why should you as an investor care about that? Because it affects valuations of the companies you're invested in. As Warren Buffett says, interest rates are like gravity on stocks, because for reasons we won't go into here, the interest rate is used in part to discount cash flows and value companies. And, ceteris paribus, a lower interest rate means a higher valuation, and a higher interest rate means a lower valuation. So, any comment coming from the Fed about interest rates can move markets. So people pay attention when this man speaks, and the Fed knows that, and they choose their words very carefully. And when asked when the Fed will gradually raise rates again, you'll hear that referred to as tapering. Chair Jay Powell had this to say.
The test for beginning our taper is that we've achieved substantial further progress toward our goals of inflation and maximum employment. And for inflation, we appear to have achieved more than significant progress, substantial further progress. So that part of the test is achieved in my view and in the view of many others. So the question is really on the maximum employment test. So if you look at a good number of indicators, you will see that since last December when we articulated the test and the readings today, in many cases, more than half of the distance, for example, between the unemployment rate in December of 2020 and typical estimates of the natural rate, 50 or 60% of that road has been traveled. So that could be substantial further progress. Many on the committee feel that the substantial further progress test for employment has been met. Others feel that it's close. They want to see a little more progress. There's a range of perspectives. I guess my own view would be that the substantial further progress test for employment is all but met. And so once we've met those two tests, once the committee decides that they've met, and that could come as soon as the next meeting, that's the purpose of that language is to put notice out that could come as soon as the next meeting. The committee will consider that test, and we'll also look at the broader environment at that time and make a decision whether to taper.
So as you saw there, all of this is news from them. This view that these tests have been all but met, this is the first time I've heard him say that. And he also said he's putting the notice out there that these tests could be considered met by the next meeting. Some committee members think they've already been met. This language is very different from just the last meeting, where the expectation was that the taper would be coming sometime in the second half of 2022, but interest rates could start to rise as soon as the end of this year. So significant change in view or how the Fed is thinking about tapering now. Moving down a rung to broader cannabis market news, Canada finally reporting its July adult use sales figures. Those came in at 338.9 million Canadian dollars. That's around 226 million in US dollars. The Canadian LP's stock prices responded very well to that news on Thursday. This was 46% year-over-year increase and a 6% increase from last month. This is against the backdrop of falling cannabis prices in the country, which we've talked about before. So with prices falling, yet total sales in dollar terms increasing, that means that the increase in the amount of cannabis being sold outweighs the drag on sales figures like this from falling prices. Hopefully that makes sense. Just to be super clear about this, as I probably didn't explain that well enough. Obviously, if you take the price of something times the number of things that you sold, you get your total sales. So if your total sales in dollars terms is going up month to month, but the price of that thing is falling, it means that the increase in the number of things that you're selling is large enough to offset falling prices. Obviously using made-up numbers here to illustrate my point. So hopefully that's super clear. I don't mean to insult your intelligence. My brain just thinks in visual terms, and I wasn't sure if I got my point across verbally. Another point to consider is that it probably means as prices are falling, that demand is coming from the black market, with those sales being converted over to legal ones. Switching over to government policy updates now. All right, as you've probably heard, since my last episode, the Safe Banking Amendment has cleared the committee to be voted on by the House, and the House, not just the committee, passed the NDAA defense bill with the Safe Banking Amendment attached. This has obviously generated a lot of press. I'm not sure I need to add to that. Now it goes over to the Senate, which has very vocal opposition from some senators who are against passing a cannabis bill that is solely about banking, such as Senator Cory Booker. That's not really a surprise, since at the very announcement of the caoa, sorry, I always stumble over that. At the announcement of that act, he said as much, and he's held that line since then. Senators Booker, Schumer, and others are the main senators behind the caoa, a more comprehensive act that would decriminalize, deschedule, and tax, and provide some social equity / criminal justice actions as well. And passing this would just take the air out of the balloon of their legislation. Let's take a look at Natalie Ferteg's Twitter. She's a reporter at Politico and covers the cannabis industry. The afternoon of September 22nd, she tweeted that she spoke to Senator Cory Booker, who told her that he opposes adding safe banking to the NDAA, quoting, "It's something that should not be included. It undermines the ability to get comprehensive marijuana reform and the kind of things that are harder to get done, like expungement of people's records." As part of this thread, she says, "Senate likes to send NDAA amendments to a vote by unanimous consent. If one senator raises an objection to an NDAA amendment, it can kill or stall it. Booker wouldn't discuss his plans, but says has a lot of options as an individual senator, should the amendment be proposed." Also, a spokesperson for Majority Leader Chuck Schumer told me today that his position has not changed since he told Politico in April that banking and comprehensive reform should move. She corrects this quote in the next tweet, "all move together." On the flip side, she also says a lot of senators, though not in key places, are in favor of the amendment. So I want you to hold some of this stuff in your head as we talk about an interview with Colorado Representative Ed Perlmutter, who is responsible for getting the Safe Banking Act amendment added to the NDAA. Marijuana Moment spoke with Representative Perlmutter after the NDAA was passed by the House. Just want to highlight a few responses here. So this question in particular, Marijuana Moment asked the congressman, some key senators have said they aren't very excited about moving banking reform in advance of comprehensive, equity-focused legalization. Have you been in touch with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and colleagues about their latest thoughts on moving safe banking now through the NDAA, while their broader effort to end prohibition is still pending? Representative Perlmutter's response, I have not. If I knew how to add cricket sounds to my video, I would add those here and just switch between this. He does say he has a call scheduled with somebody on the Senate Banking Committee who is sort of his counterpart, but he has not yet had a chance to talk to Senators Schumer or Booker about this. He doesn't think that a full legalization bill has been prepared yet, saying, I don't know where they are on tracking votes, but I do feel pretty strongly that safe banking has substantial support in the Senate, and this gives another chance to have it heard. What? You know how this works. You know that this has to go to the Senate now, where the most prominent, the people with the most sway in your own party have their own agenda, have been very vocally against this, and to not even speak to them about this, to not even know where their own bill is in the process, just having this attitude of giving it the old college try and seeing what happens. Obviously, this is all very disappointing to me. I'm sorry to be negative, but the cynic in me is saying that this was all for publicity. I really do hope that this passes. This would be great for my investments. This would be great for the industry. But just seeing stuff like this doesn't give me a whole lot of confidence. Moving on to some state policies. On the 22nd, New York Governor Cathy Hochul appointed 2 more members to the Cannabis Control Board in the state, which oversees the Office of Cannabis Management. These 2 bodies will oversee and regulate New York's cannabis market. There was one other appointment earlier this month, and now these 2 completely staffs the board, but I believe most of the 13 seats in the Office of Cannabis Management remain unfilled. It's unclear to me just how much power this board has without the broader office staff, but clearly we're seeing more progress on this under this administration than the last. Governor Hochul is quoted as saying in this release, New York's cannabis industry has stalled for too long. I'm making important appointments to set the Office of Cannabis Management up for success so they can hit the ground running. Also making news this week is an activist-led initiative in Florida to get adult use on the 2022 ballot. This is sort of a half-measure adult use program. I'd say just a step beyond decriminalizing, as it would allow adults 21 and older to use and possess cannabis and grow up to 9 plants. It does not allow for retail sales, however. So I can't imagine that this has the backing of any of the operators down there. That's not to say they'd be opposed to it. Progress is progress. And we've seen Trulieve selling plants in other states, so this could be an avenue to those sales, not just for Trulieve, but all of the operators in the state. But Florida has always been very strict with their form factors. We saw it with flower, we saw it with concentrate. But that all seems like it would be a lot of effort for incremental sales revenue. If I were an operator in Florida, I'd probably just wait until 2024 to lend my voice to crafting policy that would legalize recreational sales. All right, on to company-specific news and the main story of this episode. Cresco Labs has announced plans of another acquisition. This is a company in Pennsylvania called Penn, and the deal is expected to close in the 4th quarter for $90 million in cash and stock. This is expanding their existing portfolio in the state with another 3 dispensaries, bringing their total to 7. And that's about all that the highlights say. There's no information here about growth space, headcount, licenses. Definitely not as much information as we've seen in other releases of this nature from Cresco. It doesn't say how the 90 million is split between cash and stock. It does include language, however, that we've seen in other deals structured to keep existing management in place for a time. Maybe they'll offer more details when the deal closes. As of now, it's hard to say what kind of dilution we'll see. If you assumed that the full 90 million was in stock, which we know it's not, if you just took that number, given today's current share prices, it's around 3% dilution, but don't put any weight behind that. We don't know the split between cash and stock or what Cresco's share price is going to be in Q4, because usually the price used in these calculations is usually the weighted average share price over a trailing number of days on the closing date. I do want to take a minute to talk about dilution. A lot of investors think that it is destructive. When it happens, management doesn't care about shareholders. And raising money by issuing more shares is very common in this industry. So let's talk about it for a minute. Obviously, issuing shares is dilutive to current shareholders, of course. But if the proceeds of that are invested to increase the net present value of cash flows per share, it could very well be value creating. The TLDL, too long didn't listen, version of this is that as an owner in the company, consider this acquisition as an investment. Will the $90 million the company will lay out today return more in present value terms over the lifetime of the operation in Pennsylvania? Like we said, that $90 million using today's share price could mean 9.7 million more shares in the company that didn't exist yesterday. It dilutes the company by around 3%. More shares in the same pie means that prices go down. But let's also look at what we're getting for this $90 million. For this dilution, let's assume that Penn's revenue this year is $25 million. Given the 3 to 5 times revenue multiple that other deals have closed at, that seems reasonable. So $25 million in 2021, where will it be in year 10? Pennsylvania's market could be $2.6 billion by then. How much of that will Cresco Labs capture? 10%? 20%? Then we have to assume what margins will be like and bring all of those future cash flows into perpetuity that Cresco Labs just bought back to present day. If that's worth more than $90 million, then this is a good investment and worth the dilution hit today. And in my opinion, it will be. We'll be making an episode solely about Cresco where I present my valuation. So subscribe to my channel if you'd be interested in a video like that. One last piece of news that I wanted to present was a new product from Curaleaf. This is a vape. This is called Click, C-L-I-Q, under their Select brand. So similar form factor to other products we've seen on the market. These pods will come in 500 and 1000 milligram sizes. They say depending on individual state regulations. Looks like this battery is rechargeable via USB-C. They say that the Select brand is currently available in 17 states. What I really hope is that this pod itself here is universal, meaning that it worked more than with just their battery. It probably will be. I've seen other batteries that are shaped like this, and from a consumer standpoint, it's just easier, more convenient to not have to worry about that kind of stuff. Just buy a new pod and just plug it into the battery they already have. Happy that Trulieve is coming out with that. Margins on vape products are high. Alright, that's going to be all for today. If you're liking the content or the show, please like, subscribe, turn on notifications, all that good stuff. If you didn't like it, leave your feedback below. I'm trying to get better at this. You can reach me on Twitter at MJMarkets. I also have a Patreon set up at patreon.com/MaryJaneMarkets. But all I ask at this time is that you help me spread the word that this show exists. Word of mouth is really the only way I have of growing. So please share it out with anyone you think is interested in these companies or investing in this space, or where those people go to learn and discuss this stuff. Thank you so much for listening. I do appreciate it. And for all of the encouragement I've gotten so early on. Thank you.